Imagine showing up to a World Cup match where both teams secretly want to lose, where scoring a goal might be the worst thing that could happen to you, where the smartest, most strategic play is to walk out onto the biggest stage in the sport and quietly hope you get beaten. It sounds insane. It sounds like the opposite of everything football is supposed to be. And yet going into Saturday night, that was the exact bizarre reality facing Algeria and Austria, a World Cup game that on paper neither side actually wanted to win. So how does that happen? How do you reach a point at the World Cup where victory becomes a punishment? Let's break down the strange, brilliant, slightly broken logic of tournament permutations and the unbelievable way this particular story ended. Strip everything away, and football is the simplest game on earth. Two teams, 90 minutes, score more than the other guy, you win. A child understands it. But at this exact stage of a World Cup, the final round of group games, that beautiful simplicity can get music twisted into a pretzel. Because suddenly, it's not just about winning your game. It's about who you'll have to play next if you do. And the whole problem here has a name, and that name, music, is Spain. Because on Friday night, Spain beat Uruguay 1-0 to win Group H. The reigning European champions, ranked third in the entire world, one of the genuine favorites to lift the trophy, and the rules of the bracket meant that Spain, as group winners, music, would be sitting and waiting for whoever finished second in Group J. In other words, finishing second in your group earned you a date with one of the scariest teams in the tournament. Finishing second became a trap. Now watch how that poisons the Algeria-Austria game. Whoever won that match would music finish second and march straight into Spain. But whoever finished third could, thanks to FIFA's new format, still sneak into the knockouts as one of the best third-place teams and dodge Spain entirely, drawing a far kinder opponent like Switzerland instead. So follow the logic to its mad conclusion. Winning sends you into the lion's den. Losing, or drawing, could hand you an easier path and a much better shot at going deep in the tournament. The reward for victory was the toughest game imaginable. The reward for failure was a softer road. Welcome to the upside-down world of World Cup math, where 3 points can be the worst thing you collect all night. For Austria, this was almost comically true. A win or a draw pointed them towards Spain. But a defeat could see them finish third, slip through on tiebreakers, and land Switzerland in the round of 32 instead. Music. On paper, losing was their best-case scenario. Their manager, Ralf Rangnick, was staring at a game where the optimal result was to be beaten. For Algeria, it was trickier. And this is the key detail. A draw was their dream. It would push them into third, qualify them as a best-placed third team, and let them swerve Spain completely. But here's the catch that kept the whole thing honest. A loss would almost certainly knock Algeria out of the tournament entirely. The athletics tracker gave them less than a 1% chance of advancing if they lost. So, Algeria couldn't just lie down and surrender. They had to avoid losing while also not really wanting to win. They had to thread a needle that barely existed. If all of this sounds familiar to football historians, that's because we have been here before with these exact two nations, and it produced one of the most shameful moments in the history of the sport. Music rewind to the 1982 World Cup in Spain, the town of Gijón, West Germany versus Austria. The situation was simple. If West Germany won by 1 or 2 goals, both teams would advance, and Algeria, who had already played and were waiting and watching, would be eliminated. West Germany scored early through Horst Rubesch, and then both teams simply stopped. For over an hour, they passed the ball sideways, backwards, around in lazy circles with zero intention of scoring or conceding. It was a stitch-up in plain sight. The crowd inside the stadium was so disgusted they whistled and screamed and burned money in the stands. Algeria, robbed in broad daylight, were furious. The world was furious. It became known forever as the disgrace of Gijón. And FIFA, to their credit, actually fixed it. Because of that scandal from the 1986 World Cup onward, the final 2 games in every group have been played at the exact same time. No more watching the other result and adjusting. No more cozy arrangements. If you want to game the system, you now have to do it blind without knowing for certain what's happening in the other match. It's one of the rare cases of FIFA seeing a problem and genuinely closing the loophole. So, that was the dread hanging over Saturday night. Same 2 countries 44 years later in a situation where a quiet, gutless, non-game would have been the smart play. People were already calling it the disgrace music of Kansas City before a ball was even kicked. The fear was a cynical, passionless kickabout, two teams playing not to win while another nation's World Cup dreams hung in the balance. Because, and this is the part that gave the whole thing its emotional weight, there was a third team trapped in this watching helplessly from a hotel. Iran. Iran had already finished their group games, and their survival depended entirely on this match. They didn't even need a specific team to win. They just needed somebody, anybody, to win for a clear result to emerge. Because a draw was the one outcome that would knock them out. So, while Algeria and Austria had every incentive to play out a tame stalemate, an entire nation was praying for chaos, music for goals, for a winner. One team's ideal boring draw was another team's funeral. So, what actually happened? This is the beautiful part. Because every single fear about this game turned out to be completely, gloriously wrong. Instead of a disgrace, Algeria and Austria served up an absolute war. A breathless, exhausting, back-and-forth thriller that ended 3 apiece. Austria struck first through the veteran Marko Arnautovic. Algeria hit back. Austria led again through Marcel Sabitzer. Algeria, driven on by their legend Riyad Mahrez, equalized again. Yes, there was one strange 15-minute lull where the passing went sideways and the crowd whistled and did the wave. The ghost of Gijon briefly flickering to life. Algeria even strung together a surreal 109 music consecutive passes of pure nothing at one point. But then Mahrez popped up in stoppage time with what looked like the winner, sending the Algerian fans into hysteria and crucially sending Iran into celebration because a winner had finally emerged. And then, with practically the last touch of the entire match, a substitute named Sasha Kalajdzic rose up and headed in a 3-3 equalizer for Austria. The kind of goal, his manager said, you could train 1,000 times and never finish. With that header, both Austria and Algeria went through to the knockout rounds together, and Iran, who had been alive for about 120 glorious seconds, were eliminated in the cruelest way imaginable, from the realm of dreams straight into a nightmare. So, the game that nobody was supposed to want to win became one of the most dramatic matches of the entire group stage. It was football that won, said Algeria's coach. And he was right. The simultaneous kickoff, the players' pride, the sheer momentum of competition, all of it overpowered the cynical math that said losing was smarter than winning. And here's how it shakes out. Austria finished second, which means they're the ones who now walk into Spain. Algeria slipped through and avoided La Roja. The punishment for not quite winning and the price of that dramatic late equalizer is a date with the European champions. Sometimes the bracket gets exactly the last laugh it was always going to get. If your team could secure a better path by losing, would you actually want them to lose? Or does that betray everything sport is supposed to be? Tell me where you land and stick around because the knockout rounds are where this tournament gets truly ruthless.